You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Hello, world, and welcome to Tales from Hollywoodland, a veritable feast of movies, television, Broadway, showbiz stories, and even a little bit of news and gossip. With Julian Schlossberg, Arthur E. Friedman, and Stephen J. Rubin. And hey, I'm your announcer, Mike Faber. Today, we're looking at memorable movie moments. And now, here's Steve.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is going to be a real special show because for those of us who love movies, and who doesn't love movies, we're going to talk about those scenes in movies that are just so unforgettable. And this is pablum for me because since I was in high school, I would take my little tape recorder and put the microphone up against the television. And not only would I tape my favorite movie scenes, I would tape the whole movie. And I didn't go to film school, but I certainly learned about Hollywood by listening to these movies every night before I went to bed. And there's so many great ones. We're going to go by genre. So we're going to talk about the first genre we're going to talk about, I think, which will be happy for Julian, is I think we're going to talk about our favorite musical scenes. Musical scenes. So Julian, you want us to go or you want me to go first?
Oh, I'm happy to go because that's my genre. I love those the most, I think.
Did you ever, when you were young, did you ever think of you'd be a singer-dancer on Broadway?
Not on Broadway, but I did perform in regional theater. In fact, my biggest role was the closest I got to Sinatra was doing On the Town, playing his role in that musical.
Oh, you played Chip?
I did.
You played Chip. Oh, that's funny. That's
I was seduced by I Can Cook Too. Anyhow, obviously, we'll all agree that Gene Kelly, with 103 temperature, dancing in the rain, singing in the rain. Stanley Donen, the director, told me that he was really, at that point, they didn't think they were going to shoot it, and Kelly insisted on doing it. And so, as happy as he is jumping in the puddles, he's with 103 temperature. But what a moment in film. I mean, I don't think, unless you're totally depressed, I don't know how you can not feel good after watching him sing that. And in that musical is some incredible performance. I mean, for me, it's my favorite musical. Make 'Em Laugh, Donald O'Connor, unbelievable. The two of them, fit as a fiddle and Ready for Love. Moses Supposes. I mean, it just doesn't get better. So yes, I would say Kelly, Singing in the Rain.
You know, Peter Bogdanovich used to have a video show on one of the morning shows. This goes back about 30 years ago. And he referred to Singing in the Rain as the most ebullient musical that America has ever created, reflecting the optimism of post-World War II. And I agree with you 100%. Absolutely.
Arthur.
I was never a huge fan of West Side Story, the 1962 version. For some reason, I wasn't a huge fan of it, but there's a couple of scenes in that movie which are incredible. Key one being Rita Moreno in a dance number that she, after being supposedly raped by these guys, they made it, created into a dance number, had tremendous impact. But for me, my favorite musical number was, of all things, from Meet Me in St. Louis, and that was Clang, Clang, Clang with the trolley, Ding, Ding, Ding with the bell. My God, Judy Garland couldn't get better, and as a kid, I couldn't get that thing out of my head, you know.
It was great, the trolley song, and what I loved about it, too, to this day, is the vibrant color. The color is so rich on that. I don't know why it's so different than almost every other Technicolor film.
But it was Technicolor, though, right?
Yeah, it was, yeah. And Vincent Minnelli's ability to put together costumes and sets were unrivaled. He and Stanley Donen were the two greatest.
And isn't Judy, is she a redhead in the movie? What color is Judy?
Red wig.
So
red wig, yeah. Yeah, she looked great.
But her the lipstick, what Julian's referring to, the color of just even the lipstick, came flying off the screen. I mean, that was just magnificent.
It's amazing you mentioned lipstick because, you watch a lot of these Technicolor films from the 40s and 50s, and women wore very, very dark lipstick. And today you go around town. When was the last time you guys saw a woman wearing lipstick? I mean, I'm talking about really bright red lipstick. And I think it only happens in the movies.
Yes.
Or the bedroom.
Well, I'm going to go a little fantasy musical because one of my all-time favorite movies is The Wizard of Oz. And the sequence where you go from Dorothy landing in Oz, and it's a black and white farmhouse set, and she opens the door, and there's Munchkin and the little twittering, the little tittering of the Munchkins as she's having the conversation with Glinda. And then all of a sudden they break out in that wonderful song where Glinda says, come out wherever you are and greet the young lady who fell from a star. That sequence is beyond dazzling.
It really is. And of course, the song that we all love, Somewhere Over the Rainbow, I think Arthur reported once that they wanted to take it out. When they
said it slowed down the movie. This is another one of those great comments. They thought it was beneath Judy's dignity to sing in a barnyard.
I sent you guys a YouTube of Yip Harburg, one of the writers, who sang it in this YouTube, and sang it as great composers do. I don't care how terrible they sing. It's so great to hear them sing their songs. And especially that one, of course, what a wonder that song was. A funny thing is, you talk about that scene. The first time I ever had to go to Malibu, I was coming from Boston, got into LAX, and had these directions where to go to visit someone in Malibu. When I came through that tunnel for the first time, and the whole ocean exploded. You know the scene I'm talking about, guys? Steve, you must.
Yeah, you go through the McClure Tunnel, which leads you right onto Pacific Coast.
Right up PSCH. The opening of that was like the gods. My God, it was great, And
I think for vibrant dancing and singing, but really dancing, you've got to go far and wide to beat the barnstorming, putting up the barn in Seven Brides for Seven Brothers.
I'm sure.
Dancing is unbelievable. And Stanley Donen, who directed, told me that their big goal was to get the most masculine, strong men as dancers. They did not want anyone effete at all. They wanted the biggest, strongest guys, and boy, did they get them. That sequence, which goes on and on, I bet you that's good 10 minutes or more.
Sure.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Mike, do you have a favorite musical scene that you love?
Of course I do. What kind of moviegoer would I be if I didn't? For me, I have to go to Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. When Gene Wilder introduces the kids to the factory and he breaks into pure imagination and he opens the door and he goes, breathe in. Take it all in. And it's just wonderful. Then he goes, come with me and you'll see. And it just goes in and it's so magical. And you see this huge, vast room that everything is edible and it has a chocolate river. And it's just so beautiful. For me, that's just like one of those scenes that just sticks in my mind.
The magic of music on screen, whether it's color or black and white, becomes real magical when you see something like Jimmy Cagney in Yankee Doodle Dandy doing Yankee Doodle Dandy and then doing Give My Regards to Broadway on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about scenes, my God. And then there's the Jolson story. Those isolated Larry Parks things doing Al Jolson. Wow. Yeah, the music was the best, and now you're looking at these great entertainers up on the screen, and musicals have a great impact. All that jazz had some great numbers in it. If you like dance numbers, all the jazz to me a very underrated movie.
One of the most extraordinary dance numbers in the history of movies is in Royal Wedding when Fred Astaire dances on the ceiling, on the sides, everywhere you can possibly dance. And I asked, and Stanley Donen came up with that a whole number. And I asked him, because it's very hard. He always would explain it to me, and I couldn't get it in my head. I finally think I got it. And that they built a set that was in a large rotating cage. And at that point, they could move the cage, and it looked like he was dancing on the ceiling. But they had to bolt down all the furniture, because obviously, as they turned it around, you'd have to see it. But what a number that is! And
Julian, how about Fred Astaire? How about Fred Astaire doing anything?
Anything. And you know what it is? When you think of the great director George Stevens, you don't think of musicals at all. But George Stevens directed one of the greatest Astaire Rogers once, Swing Time, where they introduced the Academy Award winner, The Way You Look Tonight, and the song Pick Yourself Up and Gotta Dance. This is all from Swing Time. So, yeah, Stevens not known for that. We know him for Gunga Din and many other movies, but Swing Time, one of their best ones, directed by Stevens.
One night I'm driving up for dinner with some friends on Summit Ridge Drive in Beverly Hills, and I'm driving up a street called San Ysidro Drive, and who do I see coming down to the street, bringing the garbage to put in the garbage can? Fred Astaire with garbage. And he opened the thing, and he had the bandana around his waist, and he was just taking out the garbage. And I looked at him. It was Fred Astaire. Holy shit. It was unbelievable taking out the garbage.
You know, Julian, the idea of dancing on the ceiling with Astaire, I would also like to mention Gene Kelly dancing with a mouse in Anchors Away, which was rather novel at that time. That would have been Jerry the Mouse. It's wonderful. It's just wonderful. It's a comedy. And this is our favorite comedy scenes. Actually, I'd like to start, if it's cool with you gentlemen. And I'll pick up one of Julian's favorites, which is The Heartbreak Kid, which is, of course, Elaine May's film. There's a sequence in the movie where Charles Grodin, who plays Lenny Cantrell, is going to tell Sybil Shepherd's father, played by Eddie Albert, that he wants to marry his daughter. And to me, in the history of Hollywood comedy, the look on Eddie Albert's face alone makes this scene just jump off the page, because he hates Charles Grodin with a passion upon passion. And
but Steve, what's some of the dialogue that he gives back to?
Well, I mean, it starts out where he says to Eddie, he says, you know, I've just fallen head over heels for your Kelly. He says, I guess just one look did it. Just what a father wants to hear. And he wants to lay his cards on the table. He says, there is one little problem. I happen to be a newlywed. I don't have to say any more, but it's just one of those classic moments. I know we've talked about this movie all over the time. It's hard to find because there's a problem with its whoever owns it is not letting it be Blu-rayed or
what does Eddie Albert say back to him?
Oh, it just says
never in a million years.
Well, he says basically after pleading his case, Charles says, you know, after telling you all this stuff, I just want to make sure that I have your approval. and Albert says, not if you hung me from a tree and put a lip balm in my mouth. It's not that I don't like you. I hate every goddamn thing about you. You come hanging around my daughter on your honeymoon? Why did you hang around your wife? I'm not doing it justice. It's just classic. But anyway,
actually, you are. It's funny. Very
Julian, funny. What is your favorite comedy scene?
Well, one of them is Peter Falk in The In-Laws, when he's explaining to Alan Arkin and the family that where he was working at one point were the giant beaked tsetse flies that would pick up these brown babies and kidnap them. And Alan Arkin said, tsetse flies are picking up brown babies and flying away with them? What is that about? He says, well, look, he says, in the bush, there's a lot of red tape. He said, but I can tell you this, had a lot to do with the Guacamole Act. The Guacamole Act? And back and forth until finally it turns out that under the Jose Greco Flamenco Act, this is permitted. I mean, tears are coming down my face. Yes,
all I can say, Julian, is serpentine.
Serpentine. Shelley. To Shelley.
I veer off to Young Frankenstein anytime we come to comedy. There are so many great scenes in that movie, one of which is Madeline Kahn. I wouldn't say she was underrated as a comedian, because she wasn't. But she was so great that it was ridiculous. And the scene in the cave when Frankenstein comes in to shtup with her, and she looks up at him afterwards and says, Where are you going? And he's I'm leaving or whatever. And she says, all you guys are the same. Yeah. 6, 7 quickies and you're over.
Yeah.
Come on. That stuff was priceless. So many scenes in Young Frankenstein stand out.
And we also talked about, Arthur, you brought it up, the outtakes are even funnier.
Funnier, that's right.
So
work.
What about you, Mike? Mike, what's your favorite comedy moment?
Well, mine, I have a couple different ones. A few of them are Mel Brooks, and of course, Young Frankenstein, which is the one scene where they're at dinner and the monster's starting to wake up and they're sitting there eating and they hear in the background, and they said, oh yes, it's very good, doctor. And it's like, oh, it's very good. And it's like, you must really like it. And it says, oh, of course I like it. But, how did you know I liked it? Weren't you making the nummy noises? And it's like, no, if you were making the nummy noise and you weren't making, who's making the nummy noises in the background? And they all look at each other and they all run downstairs to see the monsters come woken up. And it's so many great scenes. The scene with the sedative when they were doing the pantomime, type stuff, and doing charades. Sega give. There's just so many.
And speaking of musicals, how do you get better than putting on the Ritz?
Oh, of course. And and it's just like, or the scene when they were with the bookcase it's literally Gene and Terry, put the candle back, and
Well, that to me was the one scene without question.
Yeah, and it's just
don't touch the candle.
Exactly. Don't touch the candle. And it's just awesome. And Marty Feldman, oh, Abby something, what was the brain you got? Abby normal. Exactly. And it was just, you mean you put into a 7-foot Goliath an abnormal brain? It's just wonderful. It's just, and
how about you, Steve?
Well, I had The Heartbreak Kid. That was mine.
Oh,
did you do one yet, Julian?
Well, another one for me is Monty Python and the Holy Grail. I mean, there's a fight with the Black Knight that he encounters, and I mean, it's, unless you've seen it, you can't even appreciate how funny that is. And
it's just a flesh wound.
Yes, and also they're in England, but they encounter in some castle a bunch of Frenchmen who totally insult King Arthur to the end that they finally throw a giant cow over the castle from the castle. I would say that those two movies, of anything I've ever seen, it was so much laughter in that and In-Laws for me. Those were just two I could never feel that anybody could top for me.
I would need to come back to Dr. Strangelove on comedy anytime. Take it from the time that Sellers is Dr. Strangelove sitting in the wheelchair to the point of when he can't control his hand and he keeps beguiling and stuff. That's funny stuff.
When he's on the phone with Premier Kissoff.
Yes.
By the way, the names chosen for all of the characters in Doctor
They
Strange.
did 27 takes because the cast kept breaking up and they couldn't do a one shot. So the one shot was the whole cast of those guys. And even on the 27th take, when they said, this is it, we can't go. There's a guy in the movie, the Russian guy. If you look at him, he's laughing.
Yeah, Peter Bull.
The heavyset guy.
Peter Bull.
You can't hold it back. But Sellers was a genius. He really was. A great scene was the opening of the party when they're doing, when he's doing Gunga Din and the bugle, and he keeps dying and keeps getting up, and you keep hearing the bugle. Again, underrated movie, but that's a pretty funny scene.
And the other one in Strangelove is, of course, when he has to convince Keenan Wynn to blow the lock off the Coca-Cola machine so he can get a couple of dimes to call the White House. And Keenan Wynn is very stuffy and strict and says, you know, if you do this, you're going to have to answer to the Coca-Cola company. Of course, the world's on edge at this moment. It's classic.
And Bat Guano. Bat Guano,
yes. Lieutenant Bat Guano.
Did you guys ever see the Stanley Kubrick movie that was on Eddie Muller the other night called something? I never even heard of it. It was made before The Killing.
Oh, Before the Killing.
Something Sister.
No, I didn't.
There were moments in this movie that were great, and I thought to myself, this is great, until I realized somebody said that this is Stanley Kubrick, one of his early movies.
Well, let's move over to drama, because drama is a pretty big category. Julian, do you have a favorite drama moment?
Well, one of the greats that everybody would agree is Marlon Brando and Rod Steiger in the back of that car. And it says, I could have been a contender, Charlie, could have been a contender. It's interesting, because Zan told me that when they shot that scene, they couldn't get the lighting right. They had such trouble. And if you look at that scene, which no one ever does, they had to put in Venetian blinds in the back.
Yeah, unthinkable.
That's right. But what a scene. I could have been a contender. One of the great scenes of all time.
Also the scene when he's marching back, Julian, from after he wins the battle against Steiger, and the men are now coming back to work the stirring music. Leonard Bernstein music, yes?
Yes, sir. Leonard Bernstein.
That's with that walking, the camera's up in his face and he's all cut up. Yes.
Yeah.
I'd like to mention a Billy Wilder classic called Stalag 17, where the whole movie is about who is the stoolie in the barracks. And everybody thinks it's William Holden as Sefton because he's the operator, he's the scrounger, he's got all the prizes in his little footlocker. And then, of course, it turns out to be Price. And when William Holden as Sefton confronts Price in that scene, where he walks up to him and says, "Sprechen Sie Deutsch?" And Price says, "No, I don't sprechen Sie Deutsch." Maybe one word, "Kaputt," because you're kaput, Price. And then Price says, will you get this guy out of my hair so I can go? And then Holden says, where, to the commandant's office to tell him where Dunbar is? And then he slaps him real hard and stuns Price. And then he says to him, when was Pearl Harbor, Price? Or don't you know that? And Price says, December 7th, 41. What time? And he says, 6 o'clock. I was having dinner. And then Sefton says, 6 o'clock in Berlin. They were having lunch in Cleveland. I'll tell you, that scene, you could bounce half dollars off. It is the sharpest scene. It goes on from there. One of the great scenes of all time.
Well, one of the great movies of all time. I'm happy you've mentioned it. I haven't seen that in a long, long time. I gotta go revisit Stalag 17.
I love William Holden's basically last line. If I ever see any of you guys,
he says crumbs. If I ever see any of you crumbs on a street corner, pretend we never met.
Right. But the last line was, why do you think he did it? And Robert Strauss says, do you ever think he just wanted to take the barbed wire cutters?
The animal,
Animal and Harry, animal. No, it's so true. So true.
Well,
What about you, Julian? Do you have a drama moment?
Well, another one for me is, of course, Bogart running over to Sam, who's playing the song as time goes by. That whole scene when Elsa walks in with Paul Henreid and they play it against Sam, and he comes charging out. All of that great. It's a romantic scene, but it's also a great drama scene. Yeah,
He actually doesn't say "play it again, Sam." They've been doing this for years. He actually says "play it."
yes,
Play it, Sam.
Yeah,
No,
that's right.
What about you, Mike?
For me, it's fairly straightforward. The courtroom scene between Jack Nicholson and Tom Cruise in A Few Good Men is just one of the most powerful scenes. And, Jessup is up there on the stand acting, just totally like he is, I hate to say it, the shit. And, that he's untouchable. And it was just great how Tom just started hammering into him, playing on his ego, playing that, hey, you think you're better than everybody else. And this is why you think you're above the law. And it was just such a powerful scene. And then at the end of the scene, Jessup gets up to leave and, they're like going, no, you're not leaving. The MPs come and grab him and everything. It was just so amazing. And
the greatest line.
Yeah.
You
can
can't
handle the truth. Exactly.
Aaron Sorkin at his best.
Oh,
At
it
his
is
best.
so
I'll
wonderful.
give you guys a scene that is so powerful and so brilliant that is from one of the great movies ever made by William Wyler. This scene had no sound. It's just a scene of Frederick Marsh coming home from World War II, entering into his apartment, and his kids see him and embrace him, and he holds their mouth with something, and she's in the kitchen doing dishes or something, and she just knows that he's there.
Who was at the door, Peggy?
Who was at the door? What a scene! What a scene that was! And it can stand up on its own. You just have to see the frame of the setup, which is about maybe 30 seconds, and you'll get the emotional impact of that scene when it switches into her and you see her face. Wow. They don't make them like that anymore, that's for sure.
Well, bookending that, I would also say, is the scene at the end of the movie where a very disillusioned Dana Andrews, who's just ready to get on a plane and go anywhere than Boone City, starts wandering around this airfield and sees all the hulks of these B-24 bombers that he used to operate in as a bombardier, and they're being junked and turned into prefabricated housings, and he's wandering past them until he finally stops at one and climbs up into his bombardier position. It's a devastating scene. Devastating.
Those are scenes, it's amazing that you just don't forget. It was this, of all the shows we've done, for me, this was the least research I had to do. I just sat down and thought of the scenes that really mattered, that stands out. And it's great that we all have them. And most of the time already, I can see we overlap a lot.
Oh, sure.
I'll give you a great one. In Battleground, when the guys are coming back from their battles and they're coming back and they go into their march, and James Whitmore is leading the battalion as they walk, and they're all hampered and wounded, and he gets them to, as the new guys are coming in, he gets them to parade by the new guys by kind of like, buttoning up their shirt and looking better and standing up straight. And you never get away to your left. You never get away to your left.
You had a good home and you left. You had a good home and you left. You're right. Your baby was there when you left. You're right. Sound off. 1, 2.
Yes.
Cadence count. 3, 4. Dun, dun,
but he got them from dragging their asses to looking real good because they wanted to be proud.
Oh, sure.
Coming away from it.
That's
What
the
a
last
scene,
scene. That's the last scene in the movie. It was a
Yes.
great scene. Great scene. I interviewed Robert Pyrash, who wrote that and won the Oscar for Best Screenplay Original that year. He was an infantryman who was in the Bulge, and when RKO backed him, he went back to the Ardennes, the Battle of the Bulge. He found his original foxhole. It was
Ooh.
four years
Wow.
after the war.
Oh, well, we always talk about Billy Wilder. We have already, and we all agree how great Double Indemnity is. But I think the scene with Edward G. Robinson taking a guy who's tried to get money from the insurance company and breaking him down and showing him that the guy's full of it. And he says to him at the end of that scene, "Go to the door," he said. And he goes to the door and he says, "Now put your hand on the handle. Turn it to the left. Open the door. Get out." I mean, it's just great. And of course, the most important is the little man in here. The little man Edward G. Robinson talks about in there. What a terrific.
Supposedly he did that in one take, Julian.
No kidding.
Yeah. Well,
and of course, the beginning when Fred McMurray and Barbara Stanwyck first meet, and we hear about he's going too fast. How fast am I going? You should be going 45 miles. Now you're going 90. I mean, it's really great dialogue and terrific acting.
Yeah, that's one great scene after another.
Mike, did you give us a drama? I can't remember.
Oh, yeah. A Few Good Men.
A Few Good Men. Perfect. Let's move on to science fiction. I have a number of favorites. Do you want to try one, Julian?
Well, I think the original, the Day the Earth Stood Still, really always remains in my head. And that last scene when Michael Rennie finally comes out of the ship and explains to the audience and the people he's speaking to how messed up our Earth is. Pretty terrific.
That movie was made 74 years ago, and I would argue it's as timely today as it was in 1951. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I had that on my list, so we did cross over there, but I also am a big fan of Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind,
Yes.
which has a number of opening sequences, but the one that I found myself riveted to was just a dialogue on the radio where you're in the perspective of the air traffic controller. I guess he's at Indianapolis Center, and they're dealing with a airliner that sees something. And the dialogue back and forth between this traffic controller and as the other traffic controllers are suddenly crowding around wondering what's going on is just terrific. It's a great scene.
That is awesome. And there's so many great scenes in that film. There's like the scene where he's sitting at the table and he starts playing with the mashed potatoes and start building Devil's Tower out of it. And everyone at the table's like looking at him because he just keeps on piling the potatoes on. And poor Terry Garr in that film playing the helpless wife. It was just like, and she didn't know what to do. It was just like, wow. It was just
Julian, do you ever recall in our days of buying film that there was a negative thing to this Close Encounters weeks before it came out?
Yes, New York Magazine ran an expose of a sneak that was held in Texas, and they claimed it was a bomb.
Yeah.
A total disaster. So you're absolutely right.
Couldn't have been more wrong, because the moment I looked at that film, it was gold to me. My God,
Yeah, I don't know what they saw in Texas, but then again, Texas does have some problems.
Yeah.
It was not the summer release that year. Star Wars owned the summer of 77. And then I believe Close Encounters came out at Christmas time and just played and played and played. And
was it 77, Steve?
Yeah.
Really?
Like December 77. It was the Christmas season movie. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that movie.
I have a question to ask all of you. I don't know what category I put it in. Maybe shock, the biggest shock scenes you've ever encountered. And I could start it off with It's not the biggest, but it's one of the biggest in the. Oh, this and the spoiler alert. If you haven't seen the movie The Verdict, turn it off for a moment. But when Paul Newman finally realizes what Charlotte Rampling has been doing and literally punches her out.
Yeah.
I mean, I never saw anything like that. It was such a shock as an audience member to see that.
But how about the greatness of Sidney Lumet taking the exterior shot of Newman meeting with Jack Warden on the street, which I think was 3rd Avenue, if I'm not mistaken, or something. It was the East Side, and getting told what had happened, and you don't hear nothing, you just see, and it's a great shot of that, and he goes into the restaurant and punches her out.
Steve, how about you? What shocked you in the movies?
Well, I think if you list the word shocking movie scenes in the dictionary or the encyclopedia, you got to have Janet Leigh taking a shower in Psycho. And she's by the way, she's a major star. You figure she's going to be in the whole picture. And all of a sudden, hello.
Or goodbye.
Or goodbye.
Yeah. Also, Marty Balsam going up the stairs. Marty Balsam going up the stairs. Holy cow. And Bernard Herrmann's music and little Tony Perkins in a dress. Pretty tough stuff, I'll tell you.
Oh, yeah. Well, speaking of Hitchcock, I mean, I don't know if it's so much a shock and more as a drama, but I've been reading a Stephen Rebello book right now on the making of Strangers on a Train. Oh. And the sequence in Strangers on the Train where Guy, the tennis player played by Farley Granger, is playing tennis in, I guess it's not Wimbledon, it's Forest Hills. At the same exact moment that Bruno, the villain, has dropped his cigarette lighter, or I should say Guy's cigarette lighter, in a grating in the train station, the juxtaposition of the tennis match, where he's desperately trying to finish the tennis match so he can get to Metcalf, and Bruno trying to get his lighter, powered by Dmitri Tiomkin's amazing music, is one of the most thrilling scenes ever in a Hitchcock movie.
Another shocking scene for me was, of course, in The Omen, when the little boy in his tricycle goes after his own mother, Lee Remick, and Lee Remick ends up dying. Really shocked the hell out of me.
Great shock scene was from The Shining when he comes in, Kubrick comes in, and you see this guy. The whole movie has been writing this one line. Little Johnny goes to the thing that he's been writing 9,000 times, and he's numb. So that was to me a very shocking scene. But that's what he was writing all this time. He was writing the same line.
It's true, and of course the other scary film for me with shocking scenes was The Exorcist, and I remember the first time I saw it before it was released. And after a while, I didn't want Ellen Burstyn to go up the stairs.
Right.
I didn't want her to go up there to see this kid whose head was turning 360 degrees. It was pretty scary. Those movies, you think to yourself, well, come on, I'm a grown man. I'm not going to be scared of these movies. But in that darkened theater, you were scared.
People were so scared when I went to see it that after the scene ended, there was laughter. They had to kind of come down from that horror high. Mike, what about you? What scared the pants off you?
Well, one of the most scary scenes ever for me was in The Shining. And the scene where Jack Nicholson is slowly going crazy, of course, and he goes in, he sees the woman in the bathtub, and he walks in and she's bathing and being very flirtatious, and he starts, kissing her, and then she starts standing up and she starts aging in front of you. It was that was just like,
Stanley.
Yeah, exactly. That was so amazing. But one of the other ones, go back to Strangers on a Train. The scene at the end on the merry-go-round, where That was so well done. It just kept on spinning faster and faster and faster and faster. It was Hitchcock at its best. And it was just such a wonderful scene. And you knew, I didn't think anyone would make it out of that alive. That's how suspenseful it was.
Yeah. When Hitchcock made The Birds, and The Birds is a pretty wild and crazy movie, but when Tippi Hedren goes to visit her friend, the school teacher, and she's waiting for her to finish class, so she's sitting on a little bench next to the play area with all of the jungle gyms, and a solitary crow lands on the jungle gym, and then another one, and then we cut away to Tippy just smoking a cigarette, and all of a sudden he cuts back and there's like 2,000 crows on all these things. They're everywhere. And she kind of tiptoes her way into the schoolhouse and tells, I guess it's Suzanne Plagette, says, "Look," and they all look out the window and oh my goodness, talk about chills.
Yeah.
I will offer up a scene that has nothing to do with comedy or it's shock, and it's kind of like being in a buzzsaw. But please, if we will all remember where we were in the movie theater when we first saw Saving Private Ryan, that opening sequence, which is really not the opening sequence. The opening sequence takes place in the cemetery. But when he comes away from that and goes right into the beachhead, it was like your head was in a grinder because it just kept going and going, and it was unbelievable. And having heard reports from many of the soldiers, of course, who were there, said that it was more like it was than anything else they'd seen. It was just relentless. What a scene that was, though.
It was incredible. I remember sitting in the National Theater in Westwood with a big tub of popcorn on my lap, and I felt like it was sacrilegious to eat during that sequence. It was just...
was that 70 millimeter by any chance, Steve?
That I don't know, but I know they filmed that sequence, I believe, in Scotland, either Scotland or Ireland.
Can you imagine seeing that scene in IMAX?
Oh, it's just incredible. I mean, that's my favorite war movie, and we should move into war movies because that is a distinct genre. I'm going to go back to Spielberg, who obviously, in addition to doing Saving Private Ryan, did a film that I think is very much underrated called Empire of the Sun.
Great movie.
With a young Christian Bale as a young boy who's interned in a Japanese prison camp. And the sequence toward the end, when the Air Force, the Army Air Corps, launches a raid on that airdrome, which is right next to the prison camp, was just blows me away, just the intensity of it. I don't think I'd ever seen P-51 Mustangs up close like that, blasting away. And I was pretty much, and of course, he's this kid who spent most of the movie trying not to piss off the guards because he knew that if you piss off the guards, they're going to beat you up or take away your rations. And he's standing on the top of the building yelling out, "P-51, Cadillac of the sky, go, go, man."
How about the scene in Patton when he's overlooking the battleground and he recites that great line, "Rommel, you magnificent bastard, I read your book."
That's right. That's right. The Battle of El-Guitar.
I also like, with all the damage that's been done at the end, is he's walking through a battle and he looks up into the sky and he says, "God help me. I love this."
Yeah.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
That was something. I guess the great anti-war movie, or one of the great ones, would probably be our friend Mr. Kubrick's movie, right?
Paths of Glory?
Yeah, it's Paths
of Glory.
Yeah, it's some powerful movie, and you've got Kirk Douglas at one of his best roles, and you've got
Adolphe Menjou, Cold.
Menjou, yeah.
George McCready.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's powerful film. As a kid, I remember seeing The Sands of Iwo Jima with John Wayne, who never served in the armed forces, playing the hero in that film. And
Sergeant Stryker.
Yes, and that, of course, would affect a little kid, and it certainly affected me.
Sure, sure. No, what about you, Mike? Do you have a war film moment that stands out?
Well, one of them was the Private Ryan scene at the very beginning. When I saw it at the theater, people actually, during the middle of it, they stood up and left. It was so intense they couldn't handle it.
Which movie, Mike?
Saving Private Ryan.
Oh yeah,
for that opening scene. But for me, loved Inglorious Bastards by Quentin Tarantino, and it was such a great movie. It was a good throwback to stuff like Kelly's Heroes and movies like that. And it was interesting too, because I loved, you had the scenes, you had the Jewish squadron, going at being the Nazi hunters, and and I love the scenes, that when they were capturing any of the Nazis, they carved the swastikas into their foreheads, and to show that they were Nazis. And it was awesome because you had the scene where the big bad got captured, and because he thought he was going to be making a deal with the Americans and everything, and he had the tables turned on him, and Brad Pitt's character ended up putting him on the ground and started carving into his forehead. It was like justice right there. It was great. And then the movie theater scene in that, where they had when Hitler was at the theater, and the one actress started burnt the theater down, and it was just awesome.
How about the scene with Brad Pitt in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood at the end, when he comes out with the flamethrower?
No, it's Leo DiCaprio.
That was Leo DiCaprio.
DiCaprio comes out with the flamethrower. What a scene!
I nearly fell out of my seat. And by the way, I remember another shock scene that we have to mention. In the original Carrie, there's a scene where she's walking at the end, and the hand comes out of the grave and grabs her. I jumped so far out of my seat, I think I sprained my toe. I was that much though. But in terms of war movies, I have to mention Apocalypse Now, the sequence where they're raiding the Vietnamese village to the tune of The Ride of the Valkyries by Wagner. It's a pretty intense war scene right there.
With the helicopters, and it was awesome.
That's right. I think it's either right after or right before Robert Duvall says, "I love the smell of napalm in the morning. It smells like victory."
Yes. John Milius wrote that. He did.
Okay.
I was just going to say another war movie that I loved. It's a movie called 1917, and it is one continuous shot through the film, and it was so well done, going through the trenches of World War I, and it was just you seeing the gentleman the soldier trying to get back to deliver the message, and he was running through the trenches and seeing people falling over the sides and everything. It was just it was like you almost held your breath for 2 hours straight watching that.
You other guys see 1917, Steve, Julian?
Oh yeah, it's riveting.
I didn't see it.
Oh my goodness! They dug up half of England to make those trenches.
Yeah.
They go on and on and on and on. It's a marvelously inventive way of filming. I think the whole movie was shot in like four different sequences.
And it was a hit.
Oh yeah, it did very, very well. Absolutely. Let's before we end our show today, let's move over to Westerns, because Westerns is a big genre. And I would like to start mentioning The Searchers, which is considered John Ford's masterwork. And the whole opening sequence, not quite the opening, but when John Wayne's gone off to search for his neighbor's missing cows, and his brother and the family are left alone in that cabin. And it's what happens when they discover that they are so vulnerable. And of course, that's when the Comanches attack. I thought that sequence is just crazy. And of course, Wayne arrives too late.
We shouldn't leave this show without doing tearjerkers. And there's one scene that I will point out from a movie called The Eddie Duchin Story. Tyrone Power, who was going to die, and he was teaching his son how to play piano. Wasn't teaching him, they were playing piano together, and they both knew that this was it. And the camera backs off, and you see them playing at the end of the movie. Does any of you guys remember seeing The Eddie Duchin Story?
Sure, of course.
Yeah, what a tearjerker that was. Beautiful movie.
Kim Novak as well.
Yes. Yeah, at the top of her game.
Well, back to Westerns that Steve introduced, I would say High Noon is as good as any Western I've ever seen. Gary Cooper, one of the greatest heroes you'd ever want to watch. And you build that movie till the final showdown when these four guys are coming to get Will Kane. It just is terrific. And I was told that by Stanley Kramer, who produced it, that when they first played it and they saw the rough cut, there wasn't enough tension. And Elmo Williams, who was the editor, said, you know what we should do? We should keep shooting to the clock. We should just keep the clock as a part of the movie. And of course, we all know how fantastic that suggestion was. And I think High Noon's one of my favorite films. And on top of it, it has its own political message, which I'm not going to get into now.
No, it also, I think the movie shot where the clock exactly matches the length of the film. It's, you know, the High Noon is when the movie's supposed to have the final gunfight, and every time you cut away from it, you're 15 minutes away from noon, but apparently that's the same as it was in the actual movie time. I agree. It's a great, and of course you have that wonderful Tex Ritter song, "Do not forsake me, oh my darling."
But the hit record was Frankie Lane.
That's right. And
Right.
Tex Ritter, we should point out, was the father of John Ritter.
Yes.
Right. That's right.
Another fantastic Western then is, to me, The Treasure of Sierra Madre, which is just one of the great films I've ever seen. I think Walter Houston doing his dance is as good as it gets.
Yeah.
You cannot forget this incredible actor named Alfonso Bedoya, who plays the Mexican bandit.
Badges.
Just
We don't
fantastic.
need no stinking badges.
And he had terrible teeth, and yet he was very much in demand as a character villain. But apparently, when he finally had his teeth straightened at the dentist, the work dried up.
He lost his career at the dentist.
He lost his career at the
There are a
dentist.
couple of dramatic moments in the movie The Red River that were pretty strong. The scene when John Wayne had kind of had it, and the son was going to fight him finally, Montgomery Clift. I rate that in my top 20 movies of all time, let alone westerns. Some great scenes in these movies, and all these movies we're mentioning. You can't have a great movie without having some great scenes. It's impossible. But then again, some of these scenes, as we're pointing out, are so great. They're literally unbelievable when they unfold in front of your eyes. Julian mentioned the Marty Balsam scene in Psycho, where everybody talks about the shower. That scene of Marty Balsam was a very familiar face. You don't expect him to get killed, and all of a sudden, and Hitchcock does the tumbling with the camera, and shocking.
And speaking of shocking, there's a scene in Goldfinger where James Bond has been captured by the villain, and he's laid out on a solid gold table and has a laser pointed at his privates that's digging into that gold. And I'll tell you, Richard Maybaum's dialogue crackles in that scene, and Bond says, desperately says, "Do you expect me to talk?" And Goldfinger says, "No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die."
How about you, Mike? Where's your Western?
We can go funny Western. We can go serious Western. There's so many great films out there. I think a couple weeks ago we talked about The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. We talked about The Outlaw Josie Wales. But, one of the ones that, really stuck with me also was a little more modern one. Silverado was one of my favorites. It had an amazing cast, and it was just awesome. Kevin Kline as, the former bad guy who is now trying to, reform himself and only shoots like at the last, when provoked. You even had a young Kevin Costner in it. It was Danny Glover, Jeff Goldblum. It was just so well done. And
Scott Glenn.
Oh, Scott Glenn was the hero to end all heroes in that one. And so that was pretty awesome with that. So it was just a great film. But one of the funny ones that a lot of people don't know about is a movie that starred Gene Wilder and Harrison Ford called The Frisco Kid.
Very funny movie.
Very funny. Gene's a rabbi in the West.
Exactly.
That alone is the pitch.
Exactly. And it was
Blazing Saddles too.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, Blazing Saddles. And, there's so many great stuff out there. And, even, you had remakes of, other Westerns, more modern takes on it. And there's so much good stuff for Westerns.
For many years, I was privileged to be the distributor of Stagecoach, the John Ford 1939 film, nominated for Academy Award, and really making John Wayne a star. But incredible stuntman, probably the greatest that Hollywood ever knew, Yakima Canutt, is in that movie, jumps from that stagecoach onto wild horses, then gets under these horses. This is not CGI. This is real horses traveling at great speed, and he's under those horses. It was just incredible sequence in Stagecoach.
It's interesting that finally the Academy, after all of these years, is going to go offer an Oscar for stunt work. I think it starts not this coming year, but maybe next year. I'm not sure when, but it's long overdue.
You wouldn't have movies without stunts.
No, it's so true. We have this segment on our show now where we talk about the last movie we watched. I've been watching on my morning exercise regimen a movie I'd never seen, also from 39 Julian, called The Kid from Oklahoma. Oh. And I didn't know much about this movie, but I think it's considered, even though it's a James Cagney vehicle and he's very good as the hero, it features Humphrey Bogart as a villain. And Humphrey Bogart is so good that I think what the studio realized is that this guy should be the hero. And I think this is 39. So he's starting, I think Maltese Falcon is 41. So his career turned around after that one.
And that was thanks to George Raft, who turned down the Maltese Falcon.
There you go.
How about Bogart going bananas in the Treasure of the Sierra Madre? He was so perfect for a guy who was losing it.
Fred C. Dobbs.
Yes, right on the camera. Exactly. He turned into the nut. He had paranoia, and boy, did he play that well. Holy mackerel!
I watched a movie. Speaking of the last film I've watched, called East Side, West Side, not to be confused with a television series with George C. Scott. No, this movie has probably one of the greatest casts ever assembled. It's James Mason, Barbara Stanwyck, Ava Gardner, Van Heflin, Sid Charisse, William Frawley, William Conrad. They pulled out all the stops, and it is a very interesting film, sophisticated film for the time, 1949. And a film that held my interest. And Ava Gardner's never been more beautiful. Stanwyck has never been better. But to me, Van Heflin steals the movie as the good guy, so to speak.
Mike, what was the last film you saw?
Judy and I watched a movie last night. It was back from 2016. It's called Lion. It stars Nicole Kidman, and it also had Dev Patel. And it's about a young man in India who was very, very young. Him and his brother come from a very poor family, and the young boy falls asleep on the train. And the brother left him there, and the young man didn't know what town he was from. You know, he was like 4 years old. So it's, you know, he didn't know, they didn't have a permanent address. They didn't have, and he's taken into an orphanage and he is haunted his whole life. Even after being adopted by Nicole Kidman and her husband in Australia, and give him a great life. He grows up, you know, very privileged and such. He's haunted by his, you know, his family and such. And it was just a wonderful, powerful film, him searching for his family and such, you know, and because, you know, this is before the, you know, the internet was just starting as he got older. And so he was able to use Google Earth and such to try to track down the town that he came from and find his mother and such. It was just amazing.
Yeah, I remember seeing it too as well. Arthur, do you have a film you just watched?
Watched recently, over the weekend, we watched Sleepless in Seattle. Haven't seen it in a while.
Oh, sure.
Nora Ephron or David Ward. Does that stand up? I mean, it's a great movie. That's beautiful film, and it's funny. And Victor Garber is great. All these little supporting roles are excellent. Rita Wilson's terrific, and Hanks, of course. But they put the movie together so perfectly, you know, and the music of Jimmy Durante at the end singing. So yeah, how could you not recommend that? How do you not like Sleepless in Seattle?
I was thinking about Tom Hanks this morning because it's been 25 years since he did Castaway in 2000. And that is quite a movie. If you've never seen Castaway, I highly recommend it. It'll probably do wonders if you're thinking about going on a diet. Mike, I think it's time for us to take it away to you to conclude this great episode.
Oh, it's always sad when we get to this point, but it's always wonderful to spend the time together. But you've reached the end of this episode of Tales from Hollywoodland. Always remember, we couldn't do this without you. We want to hear from you, so please write us anytime at talesfromhollywoodland@gmail.com. Remember, you can find us wherever fine podcasts are found, and now you can find us up on our YouTube channel. If you made it this far into this episode, why not subscribe and give us a thumbs up? Or if you're listening to us, please give us 5 stars. If you're into social media, please check us out on Instagram and Facebook. Before we get out of here, let's check with the guys and see what's happening on their podcast. Julian, who are you talking to this week?
This week is Beatrice Wells, Orson Welles' youngest daughter, who grew up with him and went all over the world with him, never went to school, was educated by tutors, and talks about how he made his movies in the editing room and his friendship with Agnes Moorehead and Joseph Cotton, and actually her taking me to lunch at the Beverly Wilshire to meet Joseph Cotton, which was a real highlight for me.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Glad it was really an interesting interview. And, you know, her father is so momentous and a lot of ways bigger than life.
Oh, yeah.
So that's really awesome. Steve, what's cooking over on Saturday night, the movies?
Well, we reteamed with Andrea Eastman, who just did a wonderful one of our episodes, but we are doing a couple of episodes called Andrea Eastman's Hollywood, where she relates stories beyond her experience on The Godfather. And they're a lot of fun. I think I had my worst experience with a podcast, though, because right in the middle of our interview, she was sitting outside in Santa Barbara with her dog, and a skunk attacked her dog in the middle of our podcast.
Oh, no. Oh, geez.
And I didn't realize that when your dog gets skunked, you got to go into a major work here. You got to get baking soda and water and get into that area because it burns the flesh of your dog. So we were delayed for a half hour, and then Andrea came back on, and we finished it. But I hope it never happens to us, guys.
Nope. Tomato juice also works really, really well for that.
Oh, there you go.
So I know from experience. So there you go. Arthur, what do we got going on next week on our show?
Next week, we're talking Broadway, our favorite Broadway shows, musicals, plays, tearjerkers on Broadways, great drama on Broadway. We're talking Broadway And we're going to focus with Julian Schlossberg on that because he is our Broadway maven.
There we go. Awesome. On behalf of Steve, Arthur, and Julian, thanks again for listening. This is your producer and announcer, Mike Faber, and we'll see you here next time on Tales from Hollywoodland. Your Hollywood adventure starts right here.
Seasons come and seasons go, but no matter what season it is, the 42 Cast will always be there. With discussions of TV series, films, comics, novels, and even video games, it's almost like we talk about everything. So give us a listen and tell your friends. The 42 Cast is a proud member of the ESO Network.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping at the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.